would think that this hard-headed Kirk man would be done. But when you are in your desires and you having that fighting that war for what you desire, not knowing the difference between your wants, your needs, and your desire, you are going to be more than hard-headed. Because that's what guides you, because you don't have a circle around your passions and you're not able to square up your conduct. And yes, the prophet did say that. All right? And that's what happened with this guy. He couldn't do, he didn't, he wasn't able to. So what he did after this is my last demonstration, and we can go from here because it is absolutely unbelievable. However, as I said, when you have order meeting with desire and you don't know how to put a circle on your passions and square your conduct, well, you're going to have a problem, and ego sets in and so on and so forth. But some people say about this guy, Kirkman, that he was a COINTELPRO. Well, let me tell you this right here, right now. You don't know whether he was. I don't know whether he was. I kind of think that maybe he wasn't. He was just steeped in his lower self. Because when we say, oh yeah, he was a COINTELPRO, we almost give an excuse to these people. Because even if he were, it was his choice and decision to sell out. So he still, as a being, was weak minds. Because I said weak minds, I want to just read this real quick to you. I don't have it up on the board because I pulled out from these records. There was a couple of letters from Prophet Noble Drew Ali himself, and here's one of them. And this was in 28. Prior to, he knew before he passed that there was infiltration. Everyone kind of knows that, or ought to know that. The letter that he says all temples are supposed to read. So if you are in a temple, they should be reading the letter. It's on the site. I'm not going to read that here because it's accessible to you on the site. I'm just going to read this short one that I found in these records, so you get to understanding when I said that this guy was just a weak mind. Because remember, the prophet came to teach us to be ourselves and to teach us that we have a higher and a lower self. All right, so he says, this is the prophet, to the members of the Lord Science Temple of America, Islam. This is the instruction from your prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Be careful, be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is now on. But the weak can comprehend it not. The end of the time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, Noble Drew Ali, and that is why many hearts have been turned to stone. And many have eyes to see, but cannot see, ears to hear, but cannot hear, lest they would be confounded of their own sins. Right? These are the trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but will sacrifice the utmost of your life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temple. Act accordingly, and Allah will bless you for your good work. I have another one, but I'm not going through that right now. I'm going to the next and last thing that I want to show you. So what this guy did, you would think he would sit his behind down. You would think, right? Nah, That's what ego will do and desire. And that's what his divine destiny. And it's the Moorish divine and national movement of the world. And none of them should be sitting pretty. None of them. They should fix this before blaming you and I. Especially the ones who come in with their eyes open. We can see. All right, now you not only do you see, I've helped you to actually know. And I said you could get these papers yourself. So this is hard to read, but this is unbelievable. So the same guy, Kirkman, he went and made an amendment to the MST of A in his own typing, as you can see here. It doesn't look like all the other ones, does it? No. And he did it single-handedly. He doesn't have 4 or 5 people signing it, does he? No. And he had the audacity to use the original organization established papers from Chicago that the prophet had put in at the state level. Yes, this is insidious. So, listen to this. A foreign corporation organized not-for-profit desiring to exercise its corporate privileges in the state of Ohio. So he was the Grand Sheik of Ohio before the prophet passed and, at this time. So pursuant to the provisions of the Section 27 of the Foreign Corporation Act of Ohio, does hereby certify as follows. First, that its corporate name is Moorish Science Temple of America. Notice how he put it all small letters there, but nonetheless, maybe it was a typo. And second, that it is a corporation incorporated under the laws of the state of Illinois. Now, he's in Ohio, but that's what can happen when you have charges. So in the state of Illinois, County of Cook, SS number, I can't read it, it's not important. It's not relative right now. Third, that the location of its principal office outside of the state of Ohio is 422 West Elm Street, Chicago. That must be the other Temple One. Or maybe it's his home, who knows? Fourth, that the corporate privileges it proposes to exercise. All right, y'all ready for this? I blew it up all by itself. Fourth, that the corporate privileges it proposes to exercise in the state of Ohio are as follows. To set aside chapters and see to all temples in the state of Ohio keep in the laws of the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America, purposely spelled with all small caps, obviously, and see that all officials keep the laws of the county, the city, and the state, and to, here comes y'all, bring lawsuits against any member of the organization or anyone that may defraud or mislead any person or persons to make them believe that they are dealing with the Moorish Science Temple of America. That's what this man did after he already voted himself in, went 2 people to court, didn't win there. He really had some heavy desires. So, fifth, that the location of its principal office in the state of Ohio is Tecumseh Street. And 6, that it is hereby constitute and appoints a resident of the county in which the principal office of the corporation in the state of Ohio is located as its agent upon whom process against the corporation may be served in the state of Ohio. The complete resident address of said person is blah, blah, blah. Now, hold on. In case some of y'all are thinking that when he said here to bring lawsuits that against members, that he might have just been talking about the bylaws of the MSTA. Well, of course he wasn't. He just now sued the Supreme Grand Sheik against the bylaws. He went against the bylaws. He likes it better in the municipal, in the colony seat. That's where he likes it. And that is a problem. So, 7, that it hereby irrevocably consents that such process may be served on the person above named and his successor, so long as the authority of such agent and his successor shall continue, and that the process may be made upon the Secretary of State of the State of Ohio in the event that the person or persons so designated cannot be found, or the other events provided for by the Foreign Corporation Act of Ohio. And then 8th, that attached here too is a certified copy of its articles of incorporation or certification of incorporation, and all amendments, if any, charter, Quran questionnaire, cards, crescents, sheet, badges, ordination papers, and fezzes. Let me tell y'all something. Modern Europeans, someone I just spoke to today, modern Europeans who've been doing research, they found that there's a whole bunch of MSTFAs that don't have authority, that they're just everywhere. It's a division that started there. Let's make it clear, not out in the street with the people. So he attached, but before we get to him attached, look at the signature. Only he signed this. I showed you the other incorporation papers. They had 5, like 5 officers or whatever like that. He did this on his own in 1934. After he lost the lawsuit. And after he self-appointed himself against the bylaws of the MSTFA. So this Kirkman Baines temple, that's the one I wouldn't want to mess with. That's for sure. But none of us have the ability or need to try to ferret through today which one is from which temple. It's over. It's done. Because we're going to show you in a minute where the real temple is. I'm holding that for the brothers to do. Okay, so here's the deal. Then he had the nerve to look, see, there's no articles of incorporation and amendment thereto of the Moorish Temple of Silence. See, this is why it's a problem to put in the hands of sheiks and grand sheiks to make a law. Look what this man did. He used the original corporation, but he was dangerous. And so I say to you, he amended it without, he did everything without authority. He's the renegade, for real. He calling the people out here renegade. Now this is renegade. This is some renegade stuff. Now, so I just wanted to show you that he had no one's names and nothing. He may have attached something else, but whatever. And lastly, this is why I found in these papers that there were a lot of grand sheiks that were ousted out of the temple. Not by the prophet. The prophet was gone. Although he did mention some that weren't good when he traveled around. Glover Ill was one of them. For some reason, he said he was the worst man he said. So I wanted to show you this list, which I know is not clear, but just to show and prove to you. It says persons who are here, who cause confusion and trouble and are not canceling it. That's what it is. Through improper or anti-divine instructions, are herein listed and are as follows. Are herein listed and are as follows. And the first one on the list, 1931, I believe is Kirkman Bay. So he was ousted out. But if they started their own thing in the name of the prophet's work, now you see who the frauds really are, for real. And this is a list of 2 pages long. 2 pages. This page, and this page. Now, I continue to look to show y'all something. In 2005, you might want to bring your camera up because this is small. But right here, May 5th, 2005, they were still ousting out people. So all they've been doing is ousting out people, but never coming to the hedges and the highways to the people who really need to be a part of this thing. They in there just fighting, sparring with each other. And guess who was the first person on this list? So it says, I, Brother D. Bailey Ill, do solemnly affirm that on the 10th day of April, the following sheiks, Brother D. Bailey Ill, Brother Laney Ill, Brother K. Pitts, Brother Talib Bey, Brother Moreland, and Brother Satire, Brother J. Woodson, Brother S. Ali, held an official meeting on the Moorish Science Temple of America, a religious society 101, 05, 09, filed for the record for the purposes of removing and expelling members of the grand body from office for failure to act. And this is in 2005. They're still doing, I'm not saying they can't do it. And it says the following members were removed from office under heavy restriction of the law for embezzlement of the faith, embezzlement of finances, and misconduct. E. Braswell Bay happens to be the first one on this list. And this is what they don't want you to know. It's not personal. It really isn't. This is a crime. I mean, this is crazy. This is really, it shouldn't be going on. So what is Moorish America? Political jurisdiction established by the prophet to build the nation, teach customs of peace, and to uplift fallen humanity to those who have been coined Negro, colored, black, and Ethiopian, so they can take their place amongst the affairs of man and link themselves back to the family of nations. And like I said, Saturn is demanding discipline, order, and the responsibility for all the sacred information that you, I, and everyone has had, because the age of honors, awards, and achievement are upon us through Capricorn now. And some just call that retribution, justice. I gotta tell you, I said all this to give you ammunition. Look, don't feel bad about the fact that you might enter a temple and they might not accept you. We sent people to temple all the time. We never declined that. It was difficult because we knew what could happen, but it was a matter of the mind of the person that went, how they would ferret through it, how they would get through it. So don't feel bad, all right, about that. About that. Know that they were the ones that are really the renegades. They are the ones that are really the lawbreakers. All right. And with that, I'm going to yield. I'll come back on another situation before we close later, but I yield the floor and I open up to Miss and Minka. Peace and love.
Islam, peace and love. Peace and love to all. Peace and love, Mink, Ma, everybody in the chat, everyone listening. You just said a lot, you said a lot of history. You went through a lot of history relative to the Moorish Science Temple of America, and how some of those things are still playing out today. And there's a lot to go in on, but I just wanted to, take a moment to ask and yield it over to Minka. Because you were mentioning the fact that there's two temple number ones, right? In Chicago? In Chicago.
Yes.
All right. Now, and I want to ask this question and then yield the floor to Minka. Because, like, being from the region, I feel like, I don't know why, it's something not right about that. I feel like the first temple was in Newark, New Jersey, according to the 101s, for lack of better words. Because in, the 101 questionnaire, number 9, it says, what year was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? 1913 AD. Then question number 10 is where? Newark, New Jersey. So if that's where the first temple was established, I just feel like then therein may be the true temple number 1. I might be off about that though. I'm just saying, as far as the chronology of Noble Drew Ali's moves, I feel like
that's a very good question to ask, because I was gonna say, well, that means that after they established, the Moorish Holy Temple or the Moorish Science Temple, but you just read out of the 101s and it actually contradicts it. That's a good question. That makes sense.
So also I wanted to say, based off of the questions that you posted on the flyer, why did Noble Drew Ali say enforce the Constitution? I think this is a question that goes outside of the history of the Moorish Science Temple of America alone, or the members thereof, into the realm of humanity, which he was coming to uplift according to the lessons in the 101s, etc. So when he was talking about uplifting fallen humanity, that's not secular as far as people are concerned, whether they're in or out of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Fallen humanity embraces a very wide range of different types of people, of different types of nationalities, right?
Yes.
Even though you can see certain problems, specifically designed to affect our people, right? But no matter what so-called race or what nationality you're dealing with, there's uplifted and there's fallen humanity within those nations, right? So this is a global thing. This is a universal thing, of which, you know, people from all over the planet live here in America. And, you know, to highlight why he said, you know, he was calling on those to enforce the Constitution, or who were for the upliftment or the enforcement of a free national government and Constitution. You know, that is to keep peace in the society. But in his words, he specifically wanted his people to get back to this state, as you emphasize, of the constitutional form of government, so that they can learn to love instead of hate. I think that that is somewhat the answer to number one, because it says in the divine warning, money doesn't make the man. It is free national standards and power that make a man in a nation. And I'm just going to add on right here, in these days and times, there's a lot of speculation and questions about high value people, high value men, and all of that. But according to these lessons, money doesn't make the man, right? We know that man makes the money, right? So who really has the value? It's the people. It's the mind state.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Money doesn't make the man. It is free national standards and power that make a man in the nation. The wealth of all national governments, gold and silver and commerce, belong to the citizens alone. And without your national citizenship by name and principles, you have no true wealth. So, you know, when you look at what you were mentioning earlier about the United States being a corporation, if you're talking about citizenship and you're talking about the free national name and principles, well, America is definitely different than the United States. The United States is a big colony in America, but America itself is north, south, and central, including Mexico, Canada, Canaanland, etc. Right? So we have to know the law of the land isn't necessarily the law of the colony, even though the colonies are bound to it.
Well, actually, yeah. Well, the colonies, they turned into the states, and the states are the members of the United States. The United States is a union company. That's why they have the address to the union, and the members of said union are the states, which were, you know, the colonies at one point. So that's right. So they are the members of that.
So when he says, and I am hereby calling on all true citizens that stand for a national free government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me, this is the prophet, to help me.
Because they had to come into the constitutional form of government, which is why this whole thing was done in the first place, because they originally were the Slavic who came from England by the British or brutish Moors and worked in the plantations here, and they were under subject. They didn't have freedom. That's why they fought for their independence, and we set it up. So now everything's supposed to come together, but when you do come together, you gotta have a national name, which is what the prophet set up.
Yeah.
But
I'm emphasizing this part about the prophet saying, help me in my great missionary work, because you have some Moors today who act like every Moor after Noble Drew Ali made up this concept about enforcing the Constitution, right? Regardless of how we see life today, right? That was, how do I say this? You went to the hedges and the highways with the essentials, right, of his missionary work, right? And you have people saying that he didn't say that. He had nothing to do with enforcing the Constitution, right? And as you read in one of the letters, he said, what? Somebody wrote that the law has nothing to do with your feelings, how people feel about law. In the case that Noble Drew Ali won 2 times. Right, the thing you read about it, he says law is 2 different things. So people can feel however they want, but the law is the law, of the land.
Right.
And it's very clear.
I just want to be clear that he didn't win that. The prophet, that was merely ill that did.
Yeah.
No, in the name of the prophet. In the name of the.
Yeah, in lieu of the prophet, basically, right? Like that's what the prophet was. That was his God.
Absolutely.
The prophet himself was calling on those who were for the enforcement of, the national free government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me. This is him saying, to help me in my great missionary work, because I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. But the thing is, I'm going to emphasize, he didn't say I need help from all true United States citizens. He said from all true American citizens. So that is national and international in nature, right? All true American citizens. That was the territory or the land that he was talking about in the civic aspect. And there's a law of the land, which was a part of his missionary work, obviously. So I'm saying that to say that, those who are saying Moors who stand for the principles of the Constitution are some sort of renegades, that's them saying the prophet was a renegade. Because whether they believe we're Moors and let's we're in the Moor Science Temple of America, or we're some renegade Moors or all of that, he was calling on all of those who stood for the enforcement of the Constitution to help him, in his great missionary work. Yeah.
That's exactly what he was doing.
So, he says, I am depending on your support. He said, help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of government. I am dependent on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold again, that they will learn to love instead of hate. They will live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, right? So I'm saying all that to say that anybody who's trying to spin it like Noble Drew Ali didn't say enforce the Constitution, like it's right in his divine warning that this is the essentials of his great missionary work.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I feel like the answer to number one is on the list. It's very clear. This was essential in the aspect of uplifting fallen humanity.
Ms., this is Carol Bay. Can I make a comment on what you just talked about, Noble Drew Ali enforcing the Constitution?
Yes, please do.
Okay. My comment is that, just common sense would, let's say we lived on another landmass. Wouldn't it be the responsibility of the people there to understand the law of the land?
Absolutely.
I don't know what the confusion is. That's my point. I don't know. To me, that's the most common sense. Whatever landmass you live on this planet, you should know the law of the land. It's your protection as well.
Exactly, right? But when we know that, I guess it's the social engineering, whatever it may be, people think that we're bugging, but that's not the case. These are principles that are literally saving people's lives, right? Just knowing simple civics. That's the most simple thing of any land, is to know the Constitution or the constituents. So, in his humanitarian efforts, because remember, he's saying this somewhere between 1913 and 28.
Hey, I got one quick question though. I think you said when you said people got confused, right? I think they coming from the perspective to only enforce the Moorish Science Temple of America bylaws of ATC Constitution. I think
that's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's where they coming from that position.
And I get it, but that's also a microcosm type of level perspective, because if it's like that, right, I get it. This is the organization that they feel as though they belong to, etc. But at the same time, even within those ranks and those halls and walls, this is supposed to be a certain honor for all true and divine prophets, from Confucius, Buddha, Muhammad, Yeshua, and nowadays Ali, for sure, right? So they're looking at it from an organizational perspective. We're looking at this from a national and international perspective. And I think therein may be the contrast of views, because, you know, they're looking at it like any other people. Well, you belong to the evangelical church and you belong to the Baptist church. And you know what I mean? When the principles are supposed to be the same, regardless of which you are believing or upholding. So,
did you say all free, whoever believe in all free national government?
Yes, he was calling on all. Let's read that back. And again, just to give credence, you know, this is right. The Divine Warning, any more could get their hands on it. But we're going to go to Addressing Misunderstandings of Purpose concerning Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali, available on RV Bay Publications. The centerfold, the Divine Warning is there. And his call, let's get this right. He said, I am hereby calling on all true citizens, right? He didn't say I'm calling on all true indigenous, all true nationals, right? All true citizens, all of them, including the Europeans, basically, right? Because we could break down citizenship and status, but then he also made clear he was talking about American citizens, not United States citizens. So that's another conversation about who he was talking to. But that's what he called on, right? He says, and I am hereby calling on all true citizens that stand for a national free government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me in my great missionary work. So again, yeah, the Constitution and humanity and uplifting fallen humanity, because there were many who were at abuses of tyranny through the name of so-called government. But if we're going to talk about laws and being obedient to government and all of this, and this is why, you know, some laws are saying we should be docile and compliant. And I'm not saying that there's anything contrary to the law, but the reality is if they're being tyrants, you know, in any time frame we talk about, you know, the people owe no allegiance to that according to the Declaration of Independence, according to the Constitution, according to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, according to these documents that they say are the constituent founding documents of what people assume is government today. All of them are telling you that they cannot do this without the consent of the people. So when it becomes tyrannical, right, you know, we have institutional principles to stand on. That's what he was calling for those who said a free national government. He didn't say a slave national government, a subject national government. He didn't say a Republican, a Democrat. He did mention the Republic. I get that. Don't get me wrong. But his concept was a free national government, which, you know, not what we see today as the Republican Party, Democrat Party, but the essence of what that means in any society, what a republic actually means in any society. It is the most vital way of living with a peaceful relationship between the people and the so-called governments of those regions, because that's for the people. Really, it is. That's its essence, not what we see today, not whether we like Trump or whoever else was claiming to be Republican. Like the essence, the constituents of that is what he was about. It's humanitarian. So even with them utilizing that, that's still in a microcosm level when it comes to humanity, right? The Constitution and bylaws, I'm not knocking it, but that is for members, right? That's who's, you know, obliged to that. Everybody you meet, every more you meet who may be in humanity, uplifted or fallen, you know, they may not be members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Are they still not Moors? Do they still not have rights? Is that what we're saying? Only members of the Moorish Science Temple of America have rights. I don't believe that's true.
Well, basically, that's the the temple position, that if you're not a member of that temple, you're not a Moor. I've been in a position for a long time.
Right, and that's fraudulent.
Well, that's not true.
Yeah, because we could go right to the staple literature of Noble Dry Ali, which is the 101s, right? Question number 14. Let's just put this on the record and ask, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. It didn't say because we signed up for the MST of A in 1913. That's no disrespect. But that's not why we're Moorish Americans. We're not Moorish Americans because the Moorish Science Temple of America was founded by Noble Dry Ali. Like, the founder and guider of the movement is telling you the reason we are Moorish Americans is by descendancy. Then in the Circle 7, he goes into the fact that there's nobody who could change man from his descent nature unless his power extends beyond the great God Allah. And I haven't met a man yet who has that power. Beyond that, if anything, yeah, we're all one, we're all connected, we are life form and nature, and having to coexist in a certain sense, but none of us, our authority, we can't change nobody's descent nature, and can nobody change ours. So that's just what it is. So as far as I'm concerned, they can play that game if they want, but it's a centennial later. And what they haven't done, I don't know if they likely will ever do. I just know that this is about the people. All these movements have always been about the people. What the people do with these movements, staying true to the essence and the essentials and the principles, that's what's going to advance it. When we start getting into, it's I don't want to say it like this, so I'm not going to say it like this, but I'm going to leave that alone. It's clubism. I think it's become real tribal. Like my mother pointed out earlier, there's 2 Temple Ones in Chicago, and, they're fighting about who's the real Temple number 1 or whatever is going on. And I'm like, well, where did we get lost in the foundation of this? Because if the first temple was established not even out there, like, what are we talking about? Like, what did I miss? Because according to me, this is about the people and humanity. Not me, but from the true and divine records of Noble Dry Ali, So I'll leave that there for now. It's about the people. This is what he was calling on. We didn't make that up. Harvey Bay Publications did not make up the idea of enforcing the Constitution. We received the message that was sent to us all by Prophet Noble Dry Ali to the people, the general populace, not members of any club, whether they be MST of A, Masonic, Eastern Star, whatever. He came to the general public. And this is what he was calling on the general public to do. This is who he was seeking out to help him. Why not just the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, for that matter, then? Was that all he needed? According to him, obviously not.
This conversation is a great one. That's another thing that we can bring up right now. Is that all right? Is this a good time while we wait? Because I think that I have this picture that you had that you wanted to show.
Yeah, I was hoping we could all get to that point together.
While we're waiting, if you want to wait for him, that's fine. Here's what I wanted to say. Unfortunately, today, just before we did this class, someone had contacted me and said that there was a site that has RV Bay as not associated. Well, that's okay, because if you're not associated with someone, you're not associated with someone. All right. However, we're talking about, and we already did a class on this. If you want a class on this about the Moorish American Consulate, not about any person in particular, but about that. We wanted to show people that it's not new, it's old, it's just a new face on it. And that new face is called the Moorish American Consulate. This is also an example of what I'm talking about, a division. When we have divisions, we have divisions. This entire, mostly this movement is about divisions, this group and that group and that group and this group and so on, and it seems not to be able to tread smoothly. But I just showed you the breakdown of where that energy literally comes from in terms of why, or where that breathes at, or where there is no correction for it. But this right here is the Baltimore. If you notice, I haven't read. It says the Moorish American Consulate, and they've been out since 1978 or 9 or something like that. The only situation with them, of which over the years we've had discussion about, is that they will actually naturalize you. Do we all know the difference between naturalize and nationalize? It's very important, because nationalize is a mindset. Like, no one really nationalizes you. It's in your mind first. You got to know in your head, you realize that something is, that you are aware of who you are. And so it's a state of mind. It's not necessarily so much a process, because the only thing that you do is that you may do a proclamation and declaring same, and you may do a name correction with that, and then you may, get your ID cards, whatever, like that. So then you start being who you say you are, and all of that in law is lawful, in that, there's a case law, and that is in our class number 7, I think, called identification, where we showed that you could do business, sue and be sued, be employed in any name, quote, name you wish to. So that means that you are able to, just like the prophet did it at the temples. Do you think that the prophet, when he said, do all new business in your new name, and don't do any more old business, keep old business in your old name and do it new in your new, he didn't go ask permission from anyone to do so. So naturalizing is a process, and there are some of the temples that naturalize, and they pull people in, and everybody's getting confused. So I got to give you the true definition of it, because that's what they do. Naturalization is the act by which an alien is made a citizen of the United States of America. Are you an alien? Because if you are, then just turn up your proclamation, your judicial notice and proclamation. Right? The act of adopting a foreigner. Are you a foreigner in your own land? No. And clothing him with all the privileges of a native born. Now, the next question is, who officiates naturalization? Well, a nation or a sovereign who represents it may grant to a stranger the quality of a citizen by admitting him into the body of the political society. That is called naturalization. People come over here all the time naturalizing into what? The United States of America, for their personal being self. You can't do that. The United States of America is a company. It's a union company. It is a union. So if you naturalize yourself into it, what do you say that you are? You can't do that, but you have a national name. So now, when you have these people, excuse me?
Oh, it just begs the question is what the Supreme Court might have to say for anybody or any organized group that claim to be authorized to give naturalization to anyone, especially those who are of African descent, seeing that the Supreme Court already decided that descendants of Africa could not be slaves. So what effect could be temple to actually naturalize anybody?
Exactly. Thank you, brother. That's the point I'm getting. Yes, you got it. And descendants of Africans, they can't be citizens for the reason that I just gave. But a lot of people get upset and think that they're trying to exclude, or they're trying to exclude us from. That's not what it is. So you just picked up on that, because when you think about who's going to officiate this naturalization, it's a person who is saying that let's say this is from a temple, because it is. Temple number 13 down there in Baltimore. They've been doing it for years and years and generations and generations. So that's
wait, what temple was that? Can you say that again?
13 in Baltimore, Bratton Bay. Wow. So, let me finish. So what they're saying is, you are a stranger. And what they're saying is that they are a sovereign. And so they, by being a sovereign, has the ability to admit you, the stranger, into this political society. And they do that as or into the United States of America. That's what it is. Because, see, they misunderstand what the prophet's work was. All right? So they're saying to you, I'm a more cannot until you come into my temple and I naturalize you. It's the same controlling concept of mind that exists and is processed in different ways. Now, moving on to this, and then people are getting confused. Why are people getting confused about who is who? Because I just laid it out for everyone. They might be confused and think that if we're dealing with this group of Moors, or let's say RBB publications, that means that we are also someone else and someone else. No, that's not what that means at all. But people either, they got to pay more attention to what they're doing, or they have to release themselves from the assumption of government, let's say. All right. So we also dealt with why we could never be consuls or consul courts. I mean, this should be a broken record for some people because we looked it up. We looked it up, what it means. And as you can see, we did this last week. That's why I wasn't even going to bother with this week. But it says, as a definition, courts that are held by consuls of one country within the territory of another. So you can stop right there and say, well, are you in a foreign place? No. And then it says, under authority given by treaty for the settlement of civil cases, and in some instances they have also a criminal jurisdiction, but in this respect are subject to review by the courts of the home government. Would that be us? And that is, the reference is Black Laws Dictionary, page 388. So the question is, are you a foreigner in someone else's land, country, or territory? No, you're not. If you think you are, then you're not Aboriginal, Indigenous in your proclamations that says you are. The second one is, do you exercise your rights of birth, that the prophet said, come to the truth about your nationality and your birthrights? Do you exercise them by a treaty? Of course not. You were here before the treaty even came. We were who we are before those came into play. And lastly, are you or are you not in your homeland? These are things to think about. Now, the definition of a consul, an officer of what? A commercial character, appointed by different states to watch over the what? Mercantile interests of the appointing state and of its subjects in foreign countries. There are usually a number of consuls in every maritime country, and they are usually subject to a chief consul who is called a consul general. Consul general is not a Moorish title. So now you know who you are. A consul is an officer of a commercial character. Are you that? To watch over mercantile. Are you that? Mercantile interests of the appointing state and of its subjects in foreign countries. I don't care, like we said, who said it or why. We just gave you the definition. And the title is not a Moorish title to be consul generals. And we are not in any foreign land, period, or else we could tear up the proclamations. All right? That's what we're talking about. So that was the one thing I wanted to put down, because the confusion that we talked about, let me give you an example. Let me make sure I show it and say it right. Moorish American National Republic out of Baltimore.
Can you just clarify what year the heading of this document is that you have on the screen?
I might not be able to because of this, but I can say that this will be around 2001 because I cut it off.
Yes, right, yeah. That was no later than 2002.
Yeah, exactly.
So these so-called consulates you see today are biting them in that sense.
Yes, they are, but they don't know it. And the whole point is to naturalize, because that's what it means. That's what it means, period. Right? So they are biting them, but the people didn't know it, and then they set up the different consuls or whatever. Like I said, we have a class on this. We had this already. I believe it was class number three, that we really broke this down. But they recently put in, and it's the confusion that I'm saying is that people think that all of the wars are all connected, but they're not, because there is no unity amongst them, right? So they think that they are, and they're not. And so they posted up that they're not associated with RBB Publications and on another site. I don't know what that other site was. I'd have to bring it up. Another group. And they wanted to make it clear, and I just found this out today, and they wanted to make sure, because people were sending finances thinking they're sending it to them, but we have never received any finances that was not addressed to us. So I don't know what they mean by that, at all. But this is all the living, breathing divisions that we cannot work together with. So I say to people, as I said, and as I just showed you, everything about where the division actually started was right from the place that is making all the judgment on the people. And so when we mention about the hedges and the highways, what does that mean? Well, missionaries are supposed to be there, right? And they're not. Do you see them? Isn't the mission about, as a missionary program? And do you see them? Like, I know we were in New York for 12 years on this corners. We never saw anybody that was from any of the temples, even there, on coming together or even coming out and saying anything. So they have turned into private clubs, and they would like to keep it that way. That's what they have done, and that's what they want you to be a party to. But your national and your birthrights is not about a club, because the prophet himself said, that he was taking the covers off of all secret societies, because he was giving you the information to uncover it. See, here's what what you have to do, in case you're wondering what to do, is listen to the message that the messenger brings. Now, the prophet said that he was a universal prophet. He also gave you a big key. He dropped you the big key. He says, like, we honor all divine prophets. He named Jesus, Muhammad, Confucius, and Buddha. And if you have a temple card, that's great. You'll see that it's right there on it. So if he's telling you they're all honored, he's saying we're all along in the same line. Because when you study those things, you find that, in fact, the same message is being sent. And it's really in the spirit of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So he's already given that to you as to what to do. He said, if you find that you are the only one, what? Be the only one. He said, if you are with the group of Moors and they're not doing right, then go to another group. Leave them and go to another group. Or if you have to, just be alone. Just, find yourself. If you find yourself alone in this, then that's what it is.
Right. Hey, Sister Raleigh, you mind if I ask you a question right quick? When the consular courts closed in, I think 1961 by Woodrow Wilson, so the proper venue is still not for more to be whenever more vote goes to court. Is it not the proper venue?
Great question. That's the reason why the reason why they were disbanded is because they were never established for us in the first place. I don't care who told you otherwise. These are the facts. Listen, they were disbanded because, remember, the modern Europeans had to come into the fold of government. When they got their independence, they had to be taught law. There had to be courts, if you will, venues set up. But while they were being and the judicial system, which was being set up, there were interim courts called consular courts to handle their complaints, to handle their grievances, the modern Europeans. Once those courts were set up and the judiciary system was set up to work, there was no need for them anymore. And that's the real reason why they were disbanded.
So even though if a Moor has a problem with the European, that's still not the right venue?
No. If a Moor has a problem with anyone or European, it's not the consular court especially in your own land.
Right.
It's the system called the supreme law of the what? Land. Now, when they say the Free National Constitution of the United States of America, it's because it was for them. For what reason? To keep them in what? Check. The prophet said. What did he say? He said, enforce it so that you are not molested by who? Other citizens. Because it literally keeps them at bay from messing with you. It wasn't designed, it wasn't made for us, it's not a law per se, but by enforcing it, we keep ourselves from being molested. Yes. Oh man, are you good? Can you breathe? He's there. Fine, and we'll give him a minute to breathe because that was really stressful right there. We know you need to add to the situation here. We're waiting on you in that respect. Matter of fact, I'm going to leave it up. I don't know which one you were going to, Ms. First.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to leave hanging though. I apologize.
I definitely want to hear from Minka. There's a lot that was, going to be
discussed. I know. All right, so the brother that asked me the question, I think I answered you well enough for the moment, and we can put it on reserve for later.
And let me ask one more question. So that guy Lamont L called himself the Consul General. That's all just another problem, though, right?
Well, let me put it to you like this: Consulate General is not a Moorish title. There are usually a number of consuls in every maritime country, and they are usually subject to a chief consul who is called a consul general. It's not a Moorish title. These consuls and consul generals were over modern Europeans.
I was speaking on the conflict. I was talking about the conflict was, the problem. You talking about the conflict, confusion?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
I don't know. All right. Right. And so, like I said, some people don't even know that they're causing confusion. I'm not accusing of anything. I'm just saying, now if people think they're going to be starting something new, now they're going against the ancient information that you've already been given by your ancient foremothers and forefathers.
Sometimes when people see a prominent face beside that person that's being causing confusion, can throw people off. When they see a prominent person that you put trust in, and sometimes that face that they see next to that person can just throw them off, and they just follow that person when they see the other person next to that person.
Well, this is why the prophet said, "Man, don't know by being told," and that you don't know your strength without a foe, and also that if you're looking for your savior, where do you look? Within. If you're looking for your devil, where do you look? Within. And that's the problem about the following thing. It's time to make priest of yourself. That's where it's at. So that's all I got to say about that, because you said that correctly. That is exactly right. We want to be comfortable and convenient. Well, guess what? You got to be forced to make some changes now.
But that has a lot of problem with throwing people off track, though. I mean, when you see that prominent face, that causes confusion. I mean, within that person.
Well, I just showed you where confusion.
I'm just still alone.
All right, peace. Peace. Brother Mika, are you there? Yes. You're not so okay right now. Miz, are you on the line? So get back into the spirit. You're like, yeah, I'm here. I had to go through all of this.
Just to brief you, right. I don't know. It was crazy. We were looking forward earlier, but it was a technical difficulty or whatnot. But we was just talking about question number 1 and other things that at one point you was listening to. You was tapped in. Question number 1 about why the Noble Dry say enforce the Constitution. Not to go backwards, we just read straight from the divine warning, bro, that's who he was calling on. Those who are for the enforcement of the free national constitution and a free national government, among many other things. But definitely wanted your feedback on that, and temple number 1 being 2 temple number 1s being in Chicago, as my mother pointed out earlier, and the first temple, according to the 101s, being established in Newark, New Jersey, and you knowing the area, I really wanted to hear your thoughts on this, bro. Like, that's real talk. Islam.
Well, from the first part, I think we needed to be very clear that he was talking about enforcing the Constitution of the United States. Like, let's flatline the idea that that's not what he was talking about. It's in black and white. I don't know if you guys were able to pull that up or not before I got disconnected, but it's in the literature. It's in black and white.
Yes, I have it up.
He wasn't just only telling us to enforce the Constitution. So if you read it clearly, and we know that all law is specific, so if all law is specific, there's not a need to make a distinction between different groups of people. And when I read that, I get different groups of people. When we're talking about the citizens, we're not just speaking about us. He's calling on them to help us enforce the Constitution as well. That's the take on that. And that's why they have been doing that. They may not have been doing it in the greatest manner, but they're doing it in the greatest manner that they can, because they're not nationals here. I'm speaking about Europeans right now. They're not nationals here. So the sovereign movement, et cetera, that they've been running around with, that's them drawing on their measure and demonstrating the Constitution in the way that they can as naturalized citizens. We get messed up because we follow them as a people, I'm saying, in general. People who are proclaimed. As soon as they come in, they proclaim, and then they start mixing our methodology with their methodology, and that's not what it's meant for. So, going back, the enforcement of the Constitution is a call to us, but it's also a call to all citizens, which includes them too. Be it naturalized or not, when you naturalize, you're a citizen as well, correct? You may not have the status that the people who are native to that landmass, you can go to any landmass. And if you follow the laws, they'll allow you to naturalize here. So you're just as much a citizen as the next person. When it comes to citizenship alone, not nationality, not status, we get into that at another time. But it's clear that if somebody comes over here from China and they go through whatever loopholes that they have set up for them and become Chinese American, then after their citizenship is American, quote unquote, or U.S. citizen, the national, pardon me, all the language. But so let's make that part clear. We're supposed to enforce the Constitution. And we're supposed to help us enforce the Constitution. He time and time again called on all citizens. He actually called out the Europeans and said, the Europeans are helping me, why not you? So there's a few things that let us know that he wasn't just talking to us. That's the first take on that. I'm gonna put that down for a minute. Come back to that. You asked about the two temples. That, in a nutshell, it's a power struggle. I mean, there was only supposed to be one. We all know that. And I'm almost certain you guys went through the history of it, so I don't want to be redundant. There was a lot of backbiting and a lot of trickery and deceit and power tripping. And due to that, and it's still going on to this day, but due to it stemming from back that far, even when the prophet was alive, they were fighting him for what he brought to us. How ironic is that? He brought us what we needed to save ourselves and save the nation. And people were trying to undermine him and push him out of the way after he brought you what you needed to save yourself, save the nation. And that same energy from those same people is still amongst us today, if I could put that in a nutshell. With that being said, if things were smooth as they were supposed to be from the erection of the temple or the idea of the temple, then there would be one grand major temple. And we all would be able to congregate and or get certain things from that temple, like the charter's issue if you want to open up a subordinate temple, or if you want to go through the outer chamber, etc., etc. Those things would be run through that particular place. But since there's so much corruption and there was a break in the chain of command that still exists to this day, that's the reason why there are two temples with the power struggle. And everybody's claiming that they have this from Nobudrami, they have this, and this got passed down to this brother. And I was speaking to the mother the other day, and I just want everybody to think, I want you to think very clearly right now. You don't have to listen to me, you don't have to agree, but I want to give you something critical to think about. If the mother passes, let's say the mother says, all right, I'm gonna hang up, my chalkboard, so to speak, and I'm gonna pass this on to you guys, you men and Cujo, guys are the sons of Allah, right? So I want you guys to incorporate the MHHS with that, and I'm gonna step back and just be administrative. Now, if she makes that call and she documents it, and somebody, somehow, some way, is able to swindle us out of what she left for us to do, if they're able to, steal it, whatever have you, if they're able to create something right next to it and act as if what they have is what she gave them the order to do versus what she gave us the order to do. How would you know the difference if you're not inside of the structure? It's not really about who has what document. But essentially, I'm just saying that everybody is saying that they're number one because they have these so-called documents and this so-called lineage straight from, and that could be the case. But if you falsified or forged documents, or if you stole documents, if you stole the documents, that doesn't make it any less authentic. However, you didn't get it by lawful and righteous means within the bounds of the five principles. I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm not saying that they did. I'm saying is none of us were there, so we don't know. So what good is saying that you have this authentic stuff, but we have no way of knowing how you acquired it? And then just a little bit more on top of that, we can actually just step back and look at what it is that they're doing and what it is that they're demonstrating. If you're a temple, number one, you're supposed to be the representative of the whole body politic, so to speak. Are you hitting the hedges in the highway? Do you have a Sunday? Are you yourself in your brand body demonstrating the 5 principles and what Noble Drew taught? Those are the 3 questions. I'm leaving it at that and move on to the next one. So I can go on forever about this. So anytime you talk to somebody, I want you guys to take this with you, along with what they already taught, but I wasn't able to hear. They're saying that they're number 1. Then they should be demonstrating a certain level of Moorish increase. Like it should be spewing from them. What we've been teaching for the last few weeks, and hopefully, somebody was teaching you that or you knew it before that. This has to spew through your pores. So when somebody says that they're a grand major anything, a grand anything, a major anything, number 1, what does that entail? The best. Top of the top, the creme de la creme, etc., etc. So when you see them, they should be walking, talking demonstrations of what the prophet brought. Case not that we all shouldn't be that. I'm not taking that responsibility off of us and placing it on them. But I'm saying they're representing the nation as what they're saying. So then you should be able to see them on the hedges of the highways teaching. Again, like I said, they should be doing Sunday school, because out of the Sunday school come the guides of the nation, and no Charlie said the temple should have schools. So those are 2 things, and then the 5 principles, which would include the Constitution and bylaws, and the additional Constitution and bylaws, and the warning to the nation, which all tell people within the organization that we're for love, truth, peace, and freedom, and when the principle is violated, justice must take its course. It is telling people not to speak radical about other organizations. It's reading the Quran and knowing that chapter 45 and 47 not only bind us together, but it binds us together no matter what it is that we're attached to at the present moment. No matter if we're a part of this movement or not, you can't change the descent nature unless you're caught beyond the universal great God of Allah. So nobody is less of a more or more of a more because they've taken the steps to proclaim like we've done. We just have more of a responsibility to wake up more people and to live our lives accordingly in the process. That doesn't make us any more or any less of what our bloodline and our lineage is. So, moving on to the original temple, to me, that's where it should be. I mean, I'm a little biased from that because I was actually part of the resurrection of that at one point. If I can, in short, the politics of what's going on with the 2 major temples played a part in that. So I knew we were doing something I knew that we were doing something that threatened the egos of those elders who don't want to do anything but be stuck in their ways. Because when we started to get notoriety as the old Canaanite temple, all of them came out of the woodworks. They wanted to put us on. Oh, no. You're supposed to be temple number this. No, that's New Jersey. No, the old Canaanite temple, no, it was never, it was the first one. That was the original. What do you mean it was never? If we're talking about 1913, then we're talking about the old Canaanite temple. More Science Temple wasn't here yet. Like, what do you mean? Like, like it was going through the 101s and we do the math this way. No, but see, no, it wasn't ever really put on record and it's really not an official temple, but you guys come on over here with us and we'll get you right. That's what they were whispering out here. So my spirit at that time and up to now, building on it and bringing it back up, always told me that we were on the right path, doing what we were doing, and it threatened the very thread and the foundation that they built, what they built on, and they didn't want to compromise their positions. But that's my take on that.
I don't see it change. I don't see it changing. Do you?
No.
And so that's why the prophet said what? To do that. Excuse me?
I was just finishing what you said. That's why the prophet said, shallow men judge people by the noise. I guess it's going to take us to actually do the work and be out here, like the brother had just said, and like you've constantly demonstrated week after week, and I don't know for how many years with our rebate publications is all the work that you do, that we will, lead our people to victory for sure. And that's by helping them find the God that's within themselves, that, they can find the courage and the strength to push forward in this great missionary work to save, uplift, and fallen humanity, or to save the nation and uplift fallen humanity. That's where I was going with that. You see,
and he's excited about that. You right, though, son. That's correct. And so, and so he said, if you're looking for your Savior, itself, yes. Man is not but beautiful. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to touch on that too. I don't know.
You got all right. No, it's on you. You and Ms. got this for the rest of for all of those questions. Go ahead, take your time. If people are definitely absorbing the information, that's good energy that we're putting across. It's a necessity. Go ahead.
I want something to be very, 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 very clearly understood. The prophet came and he taught us how to be ourselves again. He re-taught us how to be ourselves, so to speak, right? Okay. He told us what we were without doubt or contradiction. We are our foremothers and forefathers. These are the merchants. These are all of the sciences and the liberal arts, so to speak. The warriors, medicine men and women, if we want to call it that, the herbalists. You get my drift. We're all of it. So I wanted to be clearly understood that when we're being ourselves, there's a measure in there somewhere. Like some of us are teaching teachers and students at the same time, but some of us have more of inclination to wake up and hit the hedges and the highways and hit the four corners of the world to all nations. And some of us have herbal inclination. Some of us have merchant inclination. Some of us have astrological and astronomical inclination. I want something to be very clear. This is not about just paperwork. This is not about just having a nationality card. Because if we are where our foremothers and forefathers were, without doubt or contradiction, and you believe that, and you know that, to where it's inside of you, then you should know that we're all those things, and there's a whole lot more that we should be uncovering, other than to tell a European that we woke up and we know who we are now. That's not even the tip of the iceberg. Let me put that over here for a minute. I'm gonna come back to that. Most importantly, the prophet said to be yourselves. He said to study yourselves. I'm gonna say this. This may be a little controversial, but I'm saying it's on my spirit, and I've worked it this way. And anybody who's been active, you've worked it this way. Okay, so we're speaking about the enforcement of the Constitution, and we're speaking of the enforcement of any documentation, any laws. Let's go back. I was still on the line when the mother said this. We go back to when, in the beginning, when the mother was speaking about nature's law. If you're in tune with nature and you're in tune with Allah, like you should be, that Constitution that we're talking about, that paper document, is just an extension. And you don't really even need that demonstrate. This should be in you. So what if you can't read? Let's go to somebody who, let's be for real. Let's just break this down. Let's deal with a realistic demonstration for a minute. If somebody can't read, like literally have, a remedial reading type of, they don't deserve the same protections and the same liberties that we deserve because we can. It's something right there. Are you following where I'm going? Like something isn't right with that. If you have the ability and the capacity to study, that's what you should be doing. But it still has to begin internally. I don't care if you study that Constitution 100,000 times. If you don't know nothing about you, you still aren't going to be able to demonstrate it to the fullest of its capacity, its potential, because you don't know you enough. You won't be confident enough to demonstrate it. You still don't know you. So when the prophet says study yourself, that's your meditation, mainly for me. Because when you meditate, and I know anybody that meditates that's on this line can relate, Allah comes to you and speaks to you and gives you what you need.
Yes. Silence.
So if you can't read, if you can't see, so let's say you can't see the type of document, but you can do audio. So now you're on this call and you're on audio, you got audio books, or you got the Holy Quran on audio, and the National Constitution and the rights of indigenous, you got all this on audio, so you can hear it, but you can't type it. Does that strip you of any more of the rights and liberties than all of us that do have the digits in our hands and the capacity? Something is missing. You walk with me, y'all. Something missing. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's you. All these other things, a lot, but it needs to be reiterated. All these things that are outside of you are just an extension and a representation of you. You still have to be that. So if you have to be that to demonstrate it properly, that means that you can demonstrate it properly without that. If you can't, then you're not digging deep enough. Hypothetically, you get kidnapped and you don't have your nationality cards. You get kidnapped and you don't have your Quran or your literature to go into. Are you able to dig deep enough within yourself and tune in to Allah and the ancestors enough to go in there convicted in who you are by bloodline, by ancestral lineage, with or without these documents? You ain't ready for that, then you ain't digging deep enough. This is not taken away from these documents, but being in a position from time to time without documents, from demonstrating and helping others demonstrate and or witnessing demonstrate with or without the documents. It's deeper than the documents. I'm telling you, it's deeper than that. Just like the temple is you. It all goes back to you. See, when we're getting heavy on the documents, we put the responsibility on something else other than us. So you wrote it out. I understand that. But can you demonstrate a document? You spent 2 days writing that document. If I snatched it from you after you finished writing it, can you demonstrate what's on it? Is it in you enough to demonstrate what's on it?
Mm-hmm.
If you lose your nationality card, is it in you enough to demonstrate what's on it? So I really, really wanted to touch that because he kept telling us, be yourself. Study yourself. If man knows, he must be that which he knows. Like it's all through what the prophet said. Are we talking about what the prophet said? We could go down the line and see this is what he said. It's not what Mika said. It's not what Mika's thinking. It's not what Mother Roz said. What Mother Roz is thinking. Not what Brother Miz is saying. It's in the same literature that we all have. And if you tap into this frequency hard enough, if you really, really, really dig it for the truth, it's going to come to you. It's going to come to you. I'm not telling people not to demonstrate documents. I'm not telling people not to study the Constitution. First of all, we're a Constitution. If you want to be technical, like a temple, the original temple is you. The original Constitution is you too. Tell me that your limbs and your digits on your fingers and your feet and all. Tell me that those aren't just digits.
Facts. That's the original grand body, Brother Minka. That's the real good.
So let's go there. You know what I mean? Like the Constitution, the original Constitution is you, just like the original temple is you. If you can't demonstrate that properly, never mind document. You're not tapped into the temple properly. How you gonna go add on to somebody else's building temple, so to speak? You're into the material thing. You don't have your soul together, your spirit man together, but you want to go add on to some material. How does that work? Same thing with the Constitution. You don't have your spiritual makeup or your Constitution or your grand body, like the brother said. You don't have that in order. How do you go and look into another Constitution for the answer? How much can you pour into that, or how much can you allow that to pour into you? If like they say, your cup isn't clean and it's not half full or half life, and however, you're not prepared for it. So I want to emphasize that. I don't care if you write a 1-page document. I don't care if you write a 1,000-page document. I don't recommend it, but neither one of those is going to do any more or any less if your spirit is correct. First of all, if you did not put a part of that corrected spirit within that administration. If it worked, it was discretionary. He almost had it. Yeah, I don't feel like messing with this. Let it go. But when you're going in your spirit writing, you got your ancestors with you. And your aura is on fire. Don't think they don't feel that. Don't think they'll see it. If we're equating this to being in battle, don't think they don't see and feel your energy. Outside of that, though, on the flip side, if you're not true to, if you're only doing it at convenience, or if you're only doing it because it's the thing to do, the same way that I'm telling you that they could feel and see when you come in there, 100%. They can see it when you don't. And even better, so can the ancestors, and so can Allah. You can't fake them out. So, I just wanted to drop that because that's important. It's very important. We keep looking for things outside of ourselves. That's in the Quran as well. So the Prophet said that too. We keep looking for things or looking for men to dress them up with fancy garbs because we're scared of Allah. It says it in the Quran. It's not me talking. I might have said it in my own way, but we can reference it, and we can go back and we can draw on it, and you can see exactly what I'm saying. Say each one is a priest unto himself. And that's reverting back to self again. It's not leaving the responsibility on Grand Sheik or Assistant Grand Sheik or Grand Mufti or Secretary or Treasurer if you're within that cipher. That's not leaving the responsibility on Mother Roz or Ms. or me or Sister Gianna. It is on you because each one is a priest unto himself. And if man knows, he must be that which is known. So I just really want to clear that up because I see a lot of people running around chasing documentation. Constitution included, like I said. If you got a different measure and you can prove that wrong, we can go into that at a later time. If you can prove to me that you don't have to dig within yourself before you can go on the outside sources to demonstrate them, or they won't be as effective. If you got a measure that's contrary to that, I'd rather hear it. Not right now. I'd rather hear it. Just think of those two questions that I asked. If somebody is illiterate, like literally illiterate, born that way, or never got a good education, etc., just never learned how to read and write properly, do they have any less rights than you do? Are they any less moral than you are? Do they have any less liberties than you do? I don't think that sounds right. And again, if somebody can't type, say they're handicapped. Let's say, again, they can't hear, but they can listen. They can speak. They can listen, but they can't see the type documentation. Do they have any less rights, constitutional rights, as we call them, or rights of indigenous people, rights of the child? Do they have any less of those than you do? Because you can see and you can type? No, that goes back to the natural order of things that the mother spoke on. Everything that's within that is natural. It's how we should be interacting with one another anyway, without it being written. It doesn't flow naturally. And 9 times out of 10, you kind of know, like, your spirit hits you, your higher self be tapping you, like, nah, that ain't the wave right there, chill out. Sometimes we ignore it, but don't tell me when you out and you making certain moves and it's like, oh man, I need to go do this by 5 o'clock. And something tells you, nah, sit down, wait, do it next day. And you go against that, and then something happens, you're frustrated. It's the natural order of things. We tap into the universe and we tap into the higher self and we tap into Allah, and that's our guide right there. So I'm gonna leave that in, because I know somebody has something they want to bring in. And I'll yield for a second and I'll come back around.
Go ahead, Liz.
Well, there's 2 things here as far as I wanted to speak. I just wanted to say I completely agree with everything that Brother Minka just said. And especially about that part about not listening to your own self and your own thoughts, right? Like, that's so important. Based off of what you were saying, I wanted to ask you this question, moving into question number 2. You being from the region of where Noble Ali's first temple
There's a lot more. That was part 1. So we're gonna have part 2 up. Have part 2 up on the Canaanland Moore's YouTube sometime later on today or whatever for part 2. Any comments or questions before we close out? I was just gonna say I was dealing with 3 brothers just in Albion and Nigerian. And long story short, I was dealing with the brothers. The European actually seen the Nigerian and I interacting because he seen me dressed up, and I seen that he had like this role on his conveyance that he's a pastor, right? Like he was promoting that he's a pastor. Jesus loves you, can be a Christian. Mm-hmm. So he seen me dressed up, and from the time I was in Canadian Tire, he seen me dressed up, and I noticed the energy. Like I turned around, I looked at him. He had a screw face, and he's talking to his wife in their language, So I kind of figured that, he's telling her, oh no, that's not the real thing, whatever. So then we never said, we never got to say hi to each other. We just made like eye contact, right? So long story short, go outside, and I went to go buy a light bulb for my conveyance, my right tail light bulb. So I'm changing the light bulb, and I noticed. I didn't close down the trunk, but I closed it down a bit, and I see the brother walking towards this conveyance because he was parked 2 blocks over from me, right? So he's walking back to his conveyance, but he couldn't help but say, he was coming towards me saying, "I like your cap," So I said to him, "Oh no, this is not a cap. You have a cap on your head, but this is not a cap. This is a headdress." Right? So then the European is there, he's analyzing what's going on, but I noticed him from before I even opened up my trunk to change my light bulb, he was just there in his conveyance, just relaxing, chilling, whatever he was doing, right, in the parking lot. And all of a sudden, he winds out his window, because I'm mentioning to him, the Nigerian guy, you're in here, you're in the Moroccan Empire, right? So the Nigerian guys kind of tell me that this is not the Moroccan Empire, so it became a thing. So I guess the brother, because the Albion kind of had his window cracked, right, already, right? So I guess he was over here in the combo, and plus when Europeans see Moors and does it on, they're like, what's going on here, right? So then all of a sudden, I see the window wind down more. So the window, so he winds down his window fully. Like it's now it's fully wound down. He can put his hand out the window and everything, right? So I noticed it. So I'm like, oh, you want to get it on the combo? I noticed that you wound on your window. Is there something that you want to add in? So I'm like, you know what? Let's go over to. I told the Nigerian bro, I'm like, let's go over to his conveyance. So now we're by the Albion's conveyance, right? All three of us. And we're explaining. I was explaining to him, we're Muslims, and the Nigerians asking me what the difference is with the Muslim. And I'm like, the dollars are interchangeable. It doesn't matter anyways. And the Albion's agreeing with me. Like, yeah, you're right. Everything I was saying. Yeah. So long story short, everything I was saying, the Albion was agreeing with me. And he loved it. Like, he loved it. Like, he smiled on his face the whole time. Like, he loved it. Like, he's like, I'm in paradise. And as a matter of fact, he's like, this is the type of stuff I love. The history, the culture. Like, I love this stuff. Like, he's breaking it down. And so the Nigerian's still trying to convince, because he's a pastor, right? So he goes on to say we should forget about the history of, what happened in history, like forget about it, we should be moving forward and forget about it. So I stopped him right in his tracks. I go, no, we should not forget about what happened. Like, yeah, we won't know. And then the Albion goes to add on, he goes, yeah, you're right. So he looks at the Nigerian guy and goes, yeah, you're right. You shouldn't, you got to tell the truth so we don't repeat the same mistakes. And this is what the Albion's telling the Nigerian guy. Right? Mind you, the Nigerian guy's a pastor, but mind you, every time that he was trying to convince me of something or anybody, he was looking at the Nigerian. He wasn't looking me in the face. Yeah. He was looking at the Albion, I mentioned. So the Nigerian's looking at the Albion, trying to convince the Albion of what he's saying. But mind you, the Nigerian's accent is so strong, his English is so like you can barely make out what he's saying, the words, right? So because he's not from here, right? Yeah. So this is interesting because the Albion was right with us, from everything we were saying, he wasn't disagreeing, like trying to knock down, us being Moors and Muslims and this being the Moroccan Empire and this being a Fez, and it's just, the prophet said that, Myra, the Albions are helping, the Europeans are helping. Why not? Why not you? Right? It was there, like making sure you were good. Right. So it was a thing of like, I witnessed this whole thing of this Albion and this brother. I'm trying to tell the brother, you shouldn't be telling people Jesus because it wasn't Jesus. Jesus says honor, not him, honor God alone, right? Yeah. So I'm telling him that part, and then he goes, yeah, you're right. So then in the end, long story short, because we were there for half an hour. Yeah. Nigeria had his wife in the conveyance waiting on him. That after 30 minutes, you have to come out and wonder what. Like, what's going on? 30 minutes isn't in the car, and I'm like, it's Canadian Tire closed at 8:00. Yeah. Mind you, when I looked at my phone, it was like 8:40 that I left. Right? So the point I'm trying to make is the fact that the Europeans, there's certain Europeans out there that love to see us, in the marvelous light. They want to see us there, but you have the ones in the east, our own people. Coming from the east over here, fighting to keep us in servitude. Yeah. You know what I mean? You always say don't let those poor Muslims under us. Right. Yeah.
So one further too, you're not secretary on Duffin.
Right.
I met one. And he was just passing, but he recognized my shirt. You remember the shirt when we went to the island, whatever with the yeah. Okay. Remember the shirt you have, the red one with me? Yeah. He recognized that place and he started to talk on the feds and everything. On the road they're building for maybe half an hour, right at the bus stop there. And all what he said to me, even goes to me, he said to me, you know what? My people, I'm kind of part Irish. Oh, there we go, know my grandfather now. I'm part Irish, and over there in Ireland, they have a place where more pure dark skinned people. Right. So we Irish people, there are dark ones too over there. That your people over here don't even know. Then I goes to him, my grandfather, I never had a picture with me. He's an Irishman that came to Jamaica. I said, oh yes, I know, and the history tell us when they come there and whatever. Because they come in there. This is why your grandfather didn't want that white woman they gave him. He got one child with her and leave her and go find my black man. Yeah. He didn't want the white one his family gave him. So this guy's telling me, because over there, they have you there too. Yeah. And that's what your grandfather wanted when he came to Jamaica. And now I just see the picture why my grandfather wanted the dark skinned lady. Yeah. This guy was telling me in Ireland, they have your people are there.
Section.
Yeah. It was amazing. Talk about it.
Yeah, so he mentioned that his nationality, so he's like, I'm not from here. He told me, he's like, I'm English. He's like, I'm from England. Right away, he mentioned, that I'm from England, I'm not from here, and he's like, and he mentioned something about Canadian sovereignty. So I'm just tripping out because I see the thing with the Canadian sovereignty thing, and then he goes to say, oh yeah, Canada's a sovereign state. I'm like, well, not really, because Canada's a corporation, but he agreed with me on that. I'll give that. I'll be on that. Like, he agreed with me on whatever I said. He's like, yeah, you're right.
I'll be honest, they're more open, and because they have some understanding of what it is.
Right.
It's our people that we trying to wake up, that don't want to come out of that sleeping state.
Mind you, that Nigerian was 20 years in as a pastor. And I asked him, I'm like, you don't know the fact that there's a difference between Muslim and Muslim? I'm like, you gotta go back to your master and tell him that you
told him that, Jesus said, worship only God, right? And he said he's 27, whatever years.
Right.
It's still that narrative.
What do we talk about? It's in Greek.
Right.
That's a Greek.
Right.
Example of a Greek.
No, it's good. It was a good build, nonetheless. The only because of the fact that the Albion was this. Like every time Nigeria says something, he's just like, no, like. So he puts my shit on blast too. But yeah, he goes, "You're driving that white Acura over there? That empty? There was that brand new SUV, right?" He goes, "You're driving that?" This is the Albion talking to the Nigerian pastor. He goes, "You guys must be really doing really good."
Big business.
He's taking it to his
You got Acura?
Business is well.
Yeah.
church doing good.
No, you can't expose this. You don't need, because I'm going to fuck with my money. No, but I mentioned Peter Moon, and I'm like, there's a lot of Albions that are talking about our prophet. Like, they mentioned our stuff in their books. And I mentioned Peter Moon. He goes, yeah, that name sounds familiar. Like, the old Mason guy, like, for sure. I'm like 33 degree.
Definitely is.
Oh, man, he'll be like,
all we need to do is, be in our customs.
Yeah.
And they're like so easy to approach us.
Yeah.
Like they're so easy to approach us to ask us, what are we doing? Like, is this like, are you going to like a play or something?
Yeah. Where are you going? Where's the party?
I'll be on Caesar Fest in the church and when I ask, like, what do you got that?
Yeah.
Religious reasons, there are people that.
Looking at you.
Keep going. I'm like,
looking at you.
yeah, like, okay.
Deer in the headlights.
But like building on what the movie, the documentary was there, and as you were running it, I think this week when the brother was saying, man, the prophet Muhammad, he know the brother you in the Bible with.
Yeah.
That was translated.
Yeah.
You know the guy was sick, but he needed him to translate.
Right.
So I know you. Let's go.
Yeah.
He understand that, and what I'm saying is to say that there's a lot of fights. Not necessarily. A lot of people want to deviate for their own personal
own gain. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's what happened with the brother.
Yeah.
But if he come here, he had to pass through Europe because the plane always stop in Europe before they come.
Nigeria.
Right. And they will. And I asked them at work. I said, "What did they call you? Tell me what they call you when they see you. They don't want to call you Moro or Morisco." He said, "Yeah, how you know? I'm talking to the ones at work." I said, "So why when you come here, you make the guy call you a black man?" Right?
Just don't serve bro.
I'm saying, think about it. I say, I'm a Moor, right? I'm in my nationality.
What are the secrets?
You know what?
Over there, all the names got English names, bro.
Yeah.
All over here got English names.
Corporate takeover.
Real for real.
But then I got you, right? And you throwing out stuff, and then I come to realize, no, Juali, the prophet, what he did, these people were using this thing to suppress the people.
Mm-hmm.
And he just blowed everything out the cap. Like, he just said, no, it's not what it is. Yeah. Because that's the plan. And he just lose everything out of the lid. But now is how to get people to come back to what it was original. Yeah. And this is the problem. So like I'm peeping, I like those YouTube thing you put it up. I'll be on it, right? And I said, the more you listen, the more you read, it's like the bulb is getting brighter. The light is getting like, damn. Because you sit down in that quiet time and you reflecting on what you just went through, when you listen or what you read, and then like, damn, yeah. Something comes to you and you're like, oh, what's going on? And it makes sense. So there's when I realized that's why nobody knows what you are. You guys tell about you know what number you are? Who's that? No wonder lost.
No wonder asleep.
And it's fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yo, what happened to that game yesterday?
that's why the prophet said the worst is yet to come. Yeah. And then you have the whole thing with the 10 people that got killed by that gunman because of white supremacy, and he's like uprising people and stuff, and he's figuring out that people are waking up, but he's like, well, I mean, I can't get the Moors, so I can get the subjects, so when I want to be freaking, the niggers, right? Yeah. So you're black, you're black, you say you're black, and that's why it's on us. It's on us. Yeah. We have an obligation to let our people know, because I'm not black. Right? And that's why I thought it was a divine intervention, because the Nigerian's coming from the east. Mind you, this guy's from the east, and he's telling me we're not in Morocco, the Moroccan Empire. I'm like, bro, you're coming from Nigeria. Like, how are you gonna come over to my land? You know what I'm saying?
You're not talking about the kingdom over there. That's the kingdom of Morocco.
It's like, never mind this Albion. This Albion looks like he
gets it.
Like the Albion was just like gray haired out, like
he's
gray
done.
hair old guy, like he's done, but he's there loving it. But it's like he's not the problem. You are.
You're the problem.
You're the problem.
Grand Sheet, I asked my sister to get me some friends, right? In the state. So she sent a pack of friends. It's soft.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not the real thing, right? So I don't wear it. So one day I decided I'm gonna fess up. Because it happened to the yellow string, it didn't have the black. So I just put it in, and then I go in the back and do something, and the people were behaving nice to me.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot I have on the vest over my head. No, come on. So now when I come out and you drop in my face, I'm like, oh, shit.
I forgot.
Forget everybody else. They coming to you when you need.
Yeah.
This is nice. I think
I
don't treat them, I come in and like I go into this,
It's the life. Yeah.
That's why your own people are gonna keep you there if you know.
Trying hard.
And I pull it.
Look at next door, perfect example. Next door.
Well, next door, I just look at it like this: the foreign Muslims from just across the street there on Scott there.
Oh yeah.
They live over here.
Right.
The people who look like us, probably from the same background,
right
next door. But the only problem with them is they got to do this right here.
Yeah.
And that other thing, they because it is chapter 47 of the Quran.
Right.
Yep.
They break out everything. Everything. So now, when you look at that, you see these brothers. It's a new thing they build. They give them,
Yeah.
It's a new thing they have.
Muslim.
Right. Yeah. It's a new thing. Yeah. So they don't understand, and you can't tell them that.
No,
they will fight you.
Yeah. No, literally.
No, because I'm peeping this. You see when you break it down, you stick up. And I'm like, yeah. But I say, branching, you did. Trust me, you did. So I'm like, I'm getting it, like I'm getting it.
They're already established themselves.
You gotta do it.
Something weird happened. It's Friday, you were on the talk show, the podcast with
Israel.
Yeah, on Thursday.
Thursday, right?
Yeah.
I was listening to that thing and dropped asleep. Right?
Was that something going on?
So now right. So I come back on to catching guy was on you.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah.
And I'm looking up. I was looking at you last night.
You gotta read.
So that's why I said that I was like, I looked at it. I started looking at it, because you know it go history. And I'm like, no man.
That's the copyright. That's the copyright. Copyright laws.
Oh my God.
So I said, well, answer that.
Question: This did you ever had a Mother Raza?
Like before they were online, then they used to do it at the actual spot.
At the actual spot.
Yeah.
So now, no.
Yeah.
That explains it all.
It didn't happen. Yeah. Everybody has their motives. You know, that's just what
So
it is.
I was noticing Rocky posts on the street Moors. The Canaanland Moors, how much viewers and whatnot.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of viewers,
Yeah.
In the millions, total views, like something like 4 million or something.
Yeah.
But the stock is like a stock thing. So I see the green thing, like the green are 0.03 went up, so it's going up. The views, people are viewing it.
Right.
But then you see the revenue, it says 0. I'm like,
Yeah.
And then that whole thing, what's her name? Something green.
Mother, you came on there talking so much smack.
Oh yeah, Rose.
And then she was like, Rose green. And she's like, you guys are getting money up here. So he had to pull it up. Like, where are we getting anything?
It's nothing. Getting nothing, yo. It ain't happening. They're not giving us a chance to get anything. That was what we were doing.
I find a lot of people jump into the Canaanland more because the sheikh
Yeah.
giving out, you helping a lot. You know, even the sister calling from California. Imagine she go from California.
Yo, I know.
Yeah.
Cali, because there ain't nobody
Yeah,
there.
she's like, yo,
Wherever they're at.
yeah.
Even Brother Albus at near Switzerland. He's more near Switzerland calling and all that, because it's hard to find good help. You're ready.
No, it's the reality. You see this one thing with truth, right? The guy will stand up, light will always shine.
Yeah.
You know, and that is what gonna pull the people when they're supposed to come, but then you got these
Pull the ones out.
the ones you put in the shovel car.
They wanna come.
They're coming out upset.
Mad.
Oh man, I mean like yo.
Yeah. So we'll be back again next week again. I think sometime in June we're probably going to be starting up the In the Part series. So yeah, just be close to the email for that. Keep you posted when that's going on. Is there anything else? Anybody have any more comments, questions? So once again, those sessions are from the Wednesday online classes that Mother Raz started up. And I think she said they're on 15 or 16 or something like that. So they've been going for a little while. So you could just go on the RV Base site, on the homepage, and all the info is there, all the downloads are there for the past classes. And we'll keep on moving, keep on doing our thing. So we'll just close out, and that'll be it for today.
Charlie made a good point. He said the reason why the stocks are going down in the corporate world is because Moors are waking up.
Yeah.
Like every more that wakes up, the stock goes down. Any more that wakes up, the stocks go down. The stocks more proclaim his nationality over there, stocks go down. So it's like a thing of like, yo, it's like, bro, I need you to freaking realize what's going on here. So the stocks can be like, yo, it's crazy.
No, originally they make a law nationalized
from the Pan American.
You look at the step that
thing from 1985.
There's little stuff up there, but
I mean, I tried different stories.
Oh yeah. 1932 was sort of American, right? So when Cucho was related to like not Cucho, he was related to like every time we go.
Islam, Morris. We're just gonna close out more. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe.
Allah, the Father of the universe.
Father of love.
Father of love.
Truth.
Truth.
Peace.
Peace.
Freedom.
Freedom.
And justice.
And justice.
Allah is my protector.
Allah is my protector.
My guide.
My guide.
And my salvation.
And my salvation.
By night.
By night.
And by day.
By day.
Through a holy prophet.
Through a holy prophet.
No withdrawal.
No withdrawal.
Islam.
Islam.
Ashe.
Just keep the lights and do that. Pictures of it. Right? No, I'm going to I was all
Islam, Moors. Peace and love to all the Moors.
Yo, don't forget. Your